And we begin with a live shot of the White House where President Joe Biden is right now. He was sworn in as the 46th president of the United States today. In his inaugural address, he declared democracy has prevailed and pledged to unite the country. Karen Kaifa is live in Washington with the very latest. Karen.
Just a short while ago, Kamala Harris was back on Capitol Hill, this time in the Senate as the vice president. She was there to swear in 3 new U.S. senators, including the 2 Democratic winners of those runoffs in Georgia just a couple of weeks ago that give the balance of power in the Senate over to the Democrats. It has been a day of tremendous change here in Washington, but the same challenges remain.
After me.
In an inaugural speech nearly 5 decades in the making, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. said this day is not about him.
Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy.
Delivering remarks on the west front of the U.S. Capitol, looking out on a national mall not filled with people, but with flags, Biden, now the 46th president of the United States, acknowledging extraordinary challenges that face the nation and his presidency.
To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy, unity.
His partner in governing, Kamala Harris, the first woman and first woman of color to serve as vice president of the United States.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution.
Inaugural festivities subdued due to COVID-19 and extraordinary security precautions. But today, a new chapter. Leaders of both parties looking on as the Biden administration seeks to unify a divided, grieving nation.
May God bless America, and may God protect our troops.
And not long ago, President Biden entered the Oval Office as the sitting president of the United States for the first time. He would find on the Resolute desk a letter from his predecessor, President Trump, though we don't know what that note says. President Biden is going to get right to work signing at least 17 executive orders tonight. We also expect to get a briefing from the new White House press secretary. Live in Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa. Now back to you.
Members of Hawaii's Congressional Delegation were among the 1,000 guests who attended the inauguration ceremony. Check out these photos. Here you see Senators Mazie Hirono and Brian Schatz side by side on the steps of the Capitol. Schatz tweeted the pic saying, quote, "Today we start a new chapter. It's a good day for Hawaii and our country."
I found it touching that Senator Roy Blunt said something that sort of touched me. He said that this process is both ordinary and miraculous. And it's ordinary because it happens every 4 years, and it's miraculous because it happens every 4 years. And I think today, especially, we recognize the miracle of American-style democracy, that the people in power are only in power by virtue of the Constitution and by virtue of being voted into office.
And here's a shot of Congressmen Kai Kahele and Ed Case at the Capitol. I spoke to Congressman Case a short time ago about the experience, and here's what he had to say.
There are just so many thoughts that go through your head when you're at an inauguration, and of course this one more than many and most, given the crises that we face, the division that we face, and so I had many different emotions as I sat there at the inauguration. But the main emotion of all was was one of just profound respect and appreciation for our country, and a sense of renewal. I think today I was not only proud of our traditions and our Constitution, not only did I think that President Biden spoke what needed to be said to all Americans, but I think I was also grateful for the message that he sent to the rest of the world, because I do believe that in much of the rest of the world, they've been waiting for America to return. And President Biden said today, we are returning. And so I think that we also have to always consider that we are still the leader of the world in many respects, and that the world looks to us for leadership.
Hi, yes, Truman.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
It's a moment that focuses the attention of the nation. I wanted to take some time to look back at some of the history of inaugurations in America.
That exact moment when the president-elect finishes that oath, he is the president of the United States, and the previous president is simply a citizen.
Presidential historian Doris Goodwin says that even without the customary crowds and galas, this inauguration, like so many others, will mark a dramatic change in direction.
Every inauguration is a new beginning. It's almost like a spiritual beginning.
In 1933, speaking amid the Great Depression, FDR issued an enduring call for a national resilience.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The most important thing he said was that there had been an absence of national leadership, and he was going to provide that leadership. It produced a change of mood in the country at large. I think that the crisis has many similarities. The crisis provides an opportunity for a leader to mobilize the resources of the nation, and if the leader is up to it, and if the citizens are up to it, that is when change can really happen.
The torch has been passed to a new generation.
The dawning of a new era was also JFK's central theme in 1961. More than 2 decades younger than his predecessor, he delivered a memorable invitation to public service.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
There's no question that he tapped something that was already there, and it meant that young people felt a sense of doing something for their country.
I, Ronald Reagan.
And in 1981, Ronald Reagan changed the look of the modern inauguration.
Directly in front of me, the monument to a monumental man.
Moving it from the east steps of the Capitol to the Grand West Front with its stunning views of the National Mall, while calling for a major shift in the nation's politics.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
This as his defeated rival, Jimmy Carter, looked on.
It's really important for the president to come to his successor's inauguration. What it symbolizes is that he's accepting that this has happened, and to not do it, I think, is really leaving a blank in democracy and really hurting the exercise of this extremely wonderful moment.
There was something else missing today, what usually happens behind the scenes.
There were visits of the families to the White House. Letters have been exchanged on the last day of the presidency. The sense really of being a part of welcoming the new person into what is the people's home. All of those rituals are gone by the wayside.
Joining us now is our own Howard Dykes. Hey Howard, what's your take on what you've seen all morning? I know you've been glued to your TV screen like so many Americans. What's your takeaways?
It was surprisingly similar to past inaugurations that I covered, given the fact that there wasn't the large crowd on the mall that you would normally expect. There were just as many VIPs on the west front of the Capitol, and the general progress of events was remarkably similar to times past. I guess they wanted to keep the traditions.
And let's talk about some of those times past you covered. What's your experiences with inaugurations?
Well, the first thing I can tell you is it's incredibly cold in Washington at this time of year. I did live coverage of both Clinton inaugurals for the UPI radio network, which were also on the west front of the Capitol. And because that is the far west side of Capitol Hill, it's a steep slope down to the National Mall. And in order to give a good shot to the photographers and cameramen, the press is put on risers, scaffolding several stories high. And for hours, because of security, you're stuck there in bitter cold and wind, sitting on metal chairs, nothing to protect you from that. In fact, the biggest problem I found in describing what was going on was to keep my teeth from chattering.
I wanted to ask you one more thing about what Biden actually said. I'm going to play this out for our viewers right now.
Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured.
So that was Biden right there saying politics doesn't have to be a raging fire that destroys everything in its path. Howard, that sort of seems to be a theme of what Biden was saying, sort of a healing process in America, right?
Right. There is definitely a sentiment in a large part of the electorate for dialing back the sharp partisan divisions that we've seen basically since the Newt Gingrich, Bill Clinton years, but of course in the past 4 years particularly. However, in the long run, if you want partisanship to be dialed down, there has to be a partisan reason to dial it down. And I think that in the next year or so, there's a chance for comedy based in part on Joe Biden's tendency to work across the aisle. He has a lifelong history of that, but also based on Republicans wanting to make sure that they are reelected in 2 years. And in order to do that, some of them in some states and in some districts need to distance themselves a bit from particularly the last few months of the Trump administration.
Howard Dykes, always appreciate your expertise and experience. Let's toss it back over to Ashley.
As President Trump's term ends and Joe Biden's begins, world leaders are weighing in on the transition of power. Ian Lee has more from London.
Many world leaders breathed a sigh of relief as Joe Biden became America's 46th president.
And after 4 long years, Europe has a friend in the White House.
In Brussels, the European Commission president said the inauguration shows the resilience of America's democracy.
This new dawn in America is the moment we've been waiting for so long. Europe is ready for a new start with our oldest and most trusted partner.
Germany's president said he's greatly relieved President Biden is moving into the White House. While French President Emmanuel Macron said he hopes a Biden administration will be more committed in the fight against terror. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he wants to work with President Biden on shared priorities.
From tackling climate change, building back better from the pandemic, and strengthening our transatlantic security.
Russia was less enthusiastic. The Kremlin said any improvement in Moscow's tense relationship with Washington would be up to the Biden administration. And in Iran, President Hassan Rouhani didn't mince words, saying today is the end of Trump's unfortunate government. Vice President Kamala Harris drew the most attention in India at her ancestral village.
I wish her well, success.
She's making history, not only as the first female vice president, but also the first of South Asian and African descent. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
Joining us now is Nick Gruby of Honolulu Civil Beat. He's in Washington, D.C., covering this all the time. Nick, where were you today? How close did you get to the Capitol? And what were you looking for?
Hi, well, thank you for having me on, first of all. Today, I spent most of my time around the White House and Black Lives Matter Plaza. I really just wanted to get a sense of what the security was like around the district today, rather than hang out for all of the pomp and circumstance surrounding the inauguration itself. One of the reasons for that is because last night I had actually spent some time with the Hawaii National Guard members who were here as they were preparing to provide security for the event. As we know, there had been a lot of concern about possible Trump supporters coming in and causing havoc once again, as they did on January 6th. Now, what I saw today was not what I saw on January 6th, but instead there were tons of security. There were thousands of National Guard personnel, Secret Service, even TSA agents that sort of not patting you down, but going through your bags and checking to make sure that you didn't have any sort of prohibited items as you were working your way through various checkpoints to get close to the White House. But when I say close, I mean, we're still talking pretty far away. They had lots of gates and barriers up just in case something bad were to happen.
And let's talk DC some more. You're there all the time covering it for our region, for Civil Beat. What do you see in this administration shift, your coverage shifting? What are some of the stories you're going to be zeroing in on to cover for Hawaii?
I think the Biden administration is going to bring a lot of different types of news to Hawaii than what we've seen over the past 4 years of the Trump administration. First of all, I think we're going to see a lot less political theater in the sense of, reacting to the daily tweet from the president or all of the lies, innuendo, and conspiracy theories flying out of the White House and just sort of confusing and upsetting a lot of people in this country. The President Biden already has plans to sign a number of executive orders today on Inauguration Day that seek to address the COVID-19 pandemic, seek to address some of the environmental rollbacks that we've seen during the Trump administration, re-enter the Paris Climate Accord, for instance, reverse the so-called Muslim ban that the Trump administration had instituted, as well as look for ways to prevent workplace discrimination against LGBTQ individuals and those in that community. Moving forward, we're also going to be looking at a U.S. Congress that is within Democratic control. Of course, Democrats control the House. They also now control the Senate, although that control is very slim. It's a 50-50 majority with Vice President Kamala Harris coming in to be that tiebreaker. Now, in order to pass legislation, you still typically need about 60 votes in the Senate, which means Democrats are going to have to get 10 members of the other party to sort of sign on. But that said, there are some maneuvers that can be done to help Democrats sort of move forward an agenda that addresses things like climate change and future relief on COVID-19.
President Trump used his last hours in the White House to grant clemency to a wide range of offenders, including members of his inner circle. Bofta Yimam has more.
Just after midnight on President Trump's last day in office, the White House announced he had issued 73 pardons and commuted the sentences of 70 other federal offenders.
Every day we get stronger and they get weaker.
The most prominent name on the list is former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Bannon is accused of defrauding donors in an effort to build a private wall along the Mexican border. His trial was due to begin in May. Two rappers also made the cut. Lil Wayne was pardoned. He faced a prison sentence of up to 10 years for possession of a firearm and ammunition by a convicted felon. And Kodak Black was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison for making a false statement in order to buy a firearm. That sentence has been commuted. USA! Despite pleas by some of the alleged Capitol rioters,
I think that we all deserve a pardon.
None were granted that request. Nor was Joe Exotic, despite fans in a stretched limo waiting outside the Federal Medical Center in Texas, where he's being held. The Tiger King was not let out of a 22-year sentence for plotting the murder of zookeeper rival Carol Baskin.
He's been in jail for 2.5 years. He's innocent.
Also notably not on the list, no family members, no Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, and despite once claiming the absolute right to pardon himself, the president apparently decided against it. Bofta Yimam, CBS News, Washington.
Stay with Hawaii News Now for the very latest presidential inauguration coverage. We'll have the very latest coming up for you at 4 on KHNL. Plus, we posted so much more coverage and special videos to our HNN digital platforms. You can check them out right now. Keep in mind, there's also a primetime special in the works that airs at 7 o'clock on KGMB.
The Hawaii State Legislature is back in session.
Ronald D. Cucci is elected president of the Senate.
Opening day was quite different because of COVID-19 restrictions and increased security. The state capitol was not open to the general public. Here's HNN's managing editor Daryl Huff with more on what to expect this session.
So everybody thinks it's all about the budget, and that's true. Biden's inauguration today is going to be their salvation. They hope the money will be coming in. What I think is very exciting to talk about, and I just got off a Zoom with Common Cause about this, is that they feel like this is going to be a revolution in public access to the Capitol. Ironically, while the Capitol is closed to the general public, you'll actually be able to see all the hearings. They'll be archived on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel for both House and Senate. All the hearings will be televised. That's never happened before. You can get a testimony via electronically through the Capitol rooms, and your testimony will be heard. You can still email, you can still Zoom, you can still call your legislators. Now, legislators can invite people to their offices. So some people will be at the Capitol. We got to worry about it. Those are all the typical insiders getting in. But overall, this is a real opportunity. You could binge watch your favorite legislative hearing. You could follow issues much more easily than in the past without having to worry about parking and travel and all the other difficulties of getting to the Capitol like we've had in past years. So it's going to be very interesting, highly ironic that a closed Capitol could be more open to the public than ever before.
Thank you so much, Huffy. Now to those coronavirus numbers. The state health department is reporting 75 new cases today and 1 new fatality. The breakdown shows 4 cases on the Big Island, 1 on Kauai, 14 on Maui, 48 on Oahu, and 8 residents were diagnosed out of state.
All right, now let's get a check of your weather. Here's Billy V.
On this Aloha Wednesday, Billy B sitting in for Guy Hoggy. Let's go ahead and give you your forecast. First of all, let's talk about the waves. Waves are on the way down on the North Shore, 6 to 8 feet there, 4 to 6 over on the west side. We do have 4 to 6 feet on the east side, but that's choppy. That's a trade wind swell there. And your water temperature is 78 degrees. Your UV index is at 6. Let's take a look at the forecast for you. Daytime high is going to be near 82 degrees, 80 degrees for Kaunakakai, but it's going to probably feel like a little bit cooler. The winds are going to be easterly 15 to 20 miles per hour. Going to be scattered showers, windy conditions, but the winds are coming down. They're not going to be what they were this past weekend. So expect a wet part of the week today, and then of course throughout the rest of the week, National Weather Service says that we'll get continued kind of trade wind showers. The winds are going to be, or the area will be moist around the Hawaiian Islands, so we'll get some more rain, but nothing like we saw this past weekend. As always, get the latest on air, online, on your mobile device, and at hawaiinewsnow.com.
Everyone is talking about the performance from today in D.C. at the inauguration. Lady Gaga, especially, she performed the national anthem. Let me pull it up for you here. Let's listen. Wow, so beautiful. Her vocals really soared as she wore that lavish gown, those long black sleeves, and that all those gold details there. A lot of people saying a lot of symbolism here, and when she referenced the flag was still there, she sort of turned to the flag of the Capitol. A lot of people talking about that as well. And that gold detail there, people saying there's an olive branch in there, sort of symbolizing unity, I guess. Lady Gaga. You can listen to that whole video on our H&N digital platforms as well.
And following Gaga's performance, Jennifer Lopez took the stage.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island.
She was wearing a crisp white pantsuit. You know I love my pantsuits. And J-Lo sang "This Land Is Your Land." She offered a message to viewers in Spanish and incorporated lyrics from her hit single "Let's Get Loud" to close out the song.
And there's a lot of changes going on to White House digital platforms, right?
That's right. So Twitter says the White House Twitter accounts have all been transitioned from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. So at Transition 46 is now at White House. At Pres-elect Biden has now become at POTUS. At Sen Kamala Harris has become at VP. And at FLOTUS Biden has become at FLOTUS.
Let's get to some good news.
That's right. As we mentioned, it's opening day at the state capitol, but instead of the usual festivities, volunteers are giving away kalo starter plants and Hawaiian flags. Now, the event is called Farmer Damien because it's happening near the Father Damien statue. A nonprofit group is handing out 10,000 kalo starters called huli and 10,000 Hawaiian flags. Now, the taro and flag giveaway, it's a drive-through event, and it's going until 5 p.m.
Yeah, still plenty of time to head out there. You guys, that's going to do it for our special. This is now coverage of the inauguration, but there's a lot more to come on H&N. First at 4 on KHNL is up next, and like I said before, so much content on our H&N digital platforms. We'll be back here tomorrow for This Is Now. Have a good one.
Aloha.